And so that's the problem, Sammy, is that you see all these lists and it's like best rookies, whatever. Peter Schrager put one out. He had his top 10 list. Caleb Williams wasn't on it because he needs clicks and GMFB needs viewers. So that's fine. I have no problem with that. And a lot of it is based on what happened this season, taking into account this, not forecasting for the coming years. Like, think about this too. Like, as everybody talks about Brock Bowers, who I loved coming out of college, coming out of Georgia. And I actually had the Raiders taking him in my mock draft with a twist last year. But a lot of it is like what had happened. And as much as everybody loves what he did, Sam Laporta was just as good as a rookie 2 years ago, and was just, he was a tight end this year. We saw CJ Stroud. Oh, everybody was acting like the Panthers had passed up on Patrick Mahomes. Now you're like, who's the guy? Who's the guy? Especially after he sunned Caleb Williams. So I don't want anybody to get upset with Caleb Williams not making this list, not doing whatever. I mentioned this on Monday night, or even on my show a couple of days ago. It's like Caleb got robbed of 3 comebacks, which he would have had 4. Then you would have looked at his rookie. He probably would actually win Rookie of the Year if he would have won a bunch of those. But it doesn't matter. We'll talk about that later. I want to get into this coaching stuff, and we're going to have Greg Braggs on to do it. So, Sammy, let's just go ahead and start the show.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Adam Ray.
It's Hester trying to work it back to the middle. Gets past the first wave, and here he goes. It's Hester inside the 30. Hester's going to take it all the way for a touchdown. And no flag, 92 yards.
Brought to you by Circa Sports Illinois, the sickest Chicago Bears and fantasy football podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
It's Wednesday night. You know what that means? It is time for Take It to the Rank, a banger of a Wednesday night. AEW knows is going to be on fire tonight in response to Raw on Monday. We got the Tape Never Lies Network coming up in about an hour and a half. And in addition to that, it is the finale of the challenge. I finally sort of caught up. So that's going to be going on. But right now, we want to talk about the coaching search of the Chicago Bears. And to do that, we're bringing in our guy, Greg Braggs from CHGO. I know we got into this a little bit on Monday night. You're at the CHGO studios. Yep. We got into this a little bit on Monday night. What do you make of the 13 candidates that the Chicago Bears, what is going on with this list of people? And Sammy, can we show the list too while we talk to Greg?
Right. We got what? I mean, I think we're up to 16 now.
No, did I miss a couple?
Oh, let's look through this.
I have 13.
It's so hard to keep track at this point, right?
I put Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, and Mike Vrabel at the top and Brian Flores. And right. I think everybody else below it is kind of like, yeah, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think we're around 15 or 16 at this point, but regardless, it is a wide net they are casting, as the Bears are calling it. And, I think you've seen good organizations take this route, but with the Bears, they're a bad organization. So any route they take, I don't blame fans for questioning it and not trusting the process until we see that it actually works. So, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. And I'm sure they're going to try to do a lot of fact finding. I guess the biggest hesitation I have is when you look back to last year's offensive coordinator search, and there was 10 names on that list, and they found their way to only one of the 10 people that got a second interview. I mean, how do you only have one person do a second interview? Why even do the second interview? That's your guy. Yeah. And so you hire Shane Waldron, and that crashes and burns in a ball of flame. And the other coordinators that you did interview that went elsewhere are flourishing all around the NFL. Doesn't matter what type of quarterback it is. They're all finding a way to be successful, except for us here in Chicago. So Ryan Poles is now the point person in this search. Well, he certainly was right at the head of that search last year. So, as much as I have been an advocate for Ryan Poles and I'm rooting for him to get this right and get this franchise back on track to at least some of the momentum we thought they had 12 months ago at this time as a roster. I just at this point now am just hoping for the best, but from what we've seen, from what Ryan has done finding coaches, at this point, he doesn't really deserve any of our trust as fans until he shows that he's learned from his mistakes.
It's so damning when you say, like, I'm rooting for him. Like, yep, I'm rooting for you. Like, not a like, hey, I have confidence or anything like that. It's like, right. I'm rooting for you. And so, yeah, I think it is pretty damning. And when you start thinking about the things that he has or has not done over the last couple of years, you're like, I don't know. But I will tell you, though, when we're looking over that list, I know for the longest time, I had been a big proponent of the Mike Vrabel list of Mike Vrabel. This is the way, or even Brian Flores. I wasn't completely off the board for this. A big part of it was because I was assuming Brian Daboll was going to be a free agent as well. Right. He was going to have an opportunity to be the offensive coordinator because I wasn't sure that he was going to immediately go from the Giants to another head coaching position. But it turns out the Giants are like, no, we're good. We're going to keep him. And the Giants are going to end up being in a position the Bears were in if it goes south for them, if they draft a quarterback
right,
and it doesn't work out. Are they going to trade a Hall to make sure they get their guy? Are they going to go with Drew Lock? Are they going to sign Sam Darnold? So they got a lot of things to work through, but Brian Daboll is off the table, which means Brian Flores and Mike Vrabel, for me, sort of off the table because I would have to be really impressed with their offensive coordinator.
Right. And the name you're hearing is Tommy Rees. If you read that Athletic article, which they did a really good job with, it's super detailed and extensive on Mike Vrabel's journey over the last year while he, waits to become a head coach and his time in Cleveland and some of the things he's learned throughout that process. And the name that gets brought up, and not as speculation to be an OC, but it's a reference point that Tommy Rees's name makes its way into this article. And so that's not enough. We talked about it earlier today on the afternoon show here on CHGO Bears. And I asked Adam Hogue, I'm like, you can't, I don't care how optimistic you are of Tommy Rees and what he's done as a coach at the college level or whatever he's doing at the NFL level, tight end coach, whatever. Caleb Williams is too important of an asset to trust a guy like Tommy Rees is going to develop him into the quarterback we need him to be and make this offense flourish like we all want it to. Again, it'd be right back to if they were to make a decision like that, I'd love Mike Vrabel in this locker room, in this organization. That's absolutely the kind of guy they need. But if you're selling me that Tommy Rees is coming along with it to develop our franchise quarterback, it's going to be another one of those, well, I hope it works out. I'm not going to hate on. I'm not going to be pessimistic towards him, but I can't, start selling positivity to the masses.
I'll meatball my way to 12 wins regardless, whomever it is. But still, but for me though, this does change a lot of things for me with Mike Vrabel and Brian Flores, because I do, like you said, I need the coordinator position to be absolutely nailed. Like I need that to be a priority. And once you've taken that away from me, I've had to pivot. So I've now decided on who I want to be. This is my new one. I have not divulged this. And I wouldn't even tell Sammy and Anello in the green room who I want to be the next head coach of the Chicago Bears.
Drum roll.
I don't know. I don't know if you're ready for me to say who I want. Are you ready for this?
I'm scared.
Why are you scared?
Because you're just such an outside the box thinker. So I don't know where you're going here. And if it's not one of the 16 names, then
It is one of the 16 names. I will say that.
Okay.
I don't know where he is on the odds list on this whole thing. And speaking of odds, I will let you know that the world's largest sports book in Las Vegas is right at your fingertips in Illinois. The Circa Sports app is sports betting the way it should be. Bet anywhere in Illinois and experience high betting limits, better moneyline splits, more in-game betting, and the best customer service. Download your new bookie today. Visit circasports.com and start betting like a pro from anywhere in Illinois. And if you or someone you might know has a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234. And that's the one line that I forgot on Monday or Tuesday. I have to do that from memory because we're pre-recording it just to pull back the curtain a little bit. I'm recording it by myself. But in any event, if now Mike Vrabel did interview with the Bears today, so we do have that. We do find that, and a lot of these or all of these are virtual interviews too. They're Zoom meetings, so they're putting out LinkedIn requests and like, hey, let's do a quick Zoom and see what happens. I don't know if you're ready for the guy that I am supporting, the guy that Adam Rank, who is supporting to be the next head coach of the Chicago Bears. Mike Kafka. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking. I'm kidding. See, now you know what it's like when you told me that Made was better than Swingers. That little swing of momentum that you had. I want you to understand this now. Okay. I like Made. Made was fun. Well, not now. Mm-hmm. It's kind of difficult. It's kind of a bad watch right now. Kind of like I can no longer enjoy Get Him to the Greek. No, the guy that I'm backing, that I'm endorsing to be the next head coach of the Chicago Bears, Ben Johnson. There it is. There it is. I'm on board. Here's something, and we touched on this Monday night, but for anybody who didn't catch us on CHGO, as somebody, and I love reading the tea leaves. It's one of my favorite things to do. If you feel like a detective and trying to figure out who's connected to who, and trying to figure out all these different things. Now, when Antonio Pierce wasn't fired by the Raiders initially, I'm like, well, then Mike Vrabel's going to New England. They must know this already, so the Raiders might as well. And then they fire Antonio Pierce, and I'm like, oh, so maybe Mike Vrabel is going to the Raiders, trying to follow those little dots. And one of the things that Mike Vrabel with the Patriots, Brian Flores, a Patriots guy, that's why Brian Daboll made sense for those two guys, where he might not make sense with anybody else. But when Lou Anarumo was fired by the Cincinnati Bengals, and I had sort of heard this before during the season, where somebody, a source of mine, who was like, hey, there's a good chance that Lou Anarumo ends up your defensive. I'm like, what? And so then you're like, well, who else in this conversation does Lou Anarumo have a connection with? And I knew there was a connection. Our boy Joey C pointed this out on CHGO After Dark on Monday. He's got a connection with Ben Johnson. He was part of that Miami Dolphins staff in 2015 that had Dan Campbell on the staff, that had Ben Johnson on the staff, and there was Lou Anarumo. And for me, I know a lot of people look at Cincinnati this season and be like, oh, why would you want this guy? They were 24th in this. But when you look at what he's done in the playoffs over the years, being the guy that doesn't necessarily shut down Patrick Mahomes, but slows him, I think that it's I think I'm good. I think I like the staff that I'm now starting to put together.
There you go. You're coming around, and I like it. You know what? I mean, between Ben Johnson and Mike Vrabel, they certainly feel like 1A and 1B of this entire coaching search for all teams. Like they feel like the top two. Now, that's not to say that they're, when Kevin O'Connell was hired by the Vikings, he wasn't the top candidate that year. And now, if you rewound that back now to what you know now, he'd be the number one coaching candidate. So there probably is somebody that all of us are kind of overlooking because he isn't the top name. And we are so desperate to make sure the Bears get this right. So we're looking for the quote unquote sure thing. And so I can't even sell you that Ben Johnson or Mike Vrabel will 100% work out in Chicago. But I think you get your best odds that way because of the resume they bring. And the thing that intrigues me about Ben Johnson and Mike Vrabel, for that matter, is as it stands right now, I think Ben Johnson is only officially doing an interview with the Bears and the Patriots, but I've yet to hear that he's officially doing an interview with Jacksonville. Maybe somebody in the chat can correct me if I'm wrong in that regard. And then Mike Vrabel, he's looking at what? The Bears, the Patriots, and the Raiders. Yeah. And so if push comes to shove and Vrabel's hired by the Patriots, then Ben Johnson, to me, we become like whether the Patriots, if they were to hire Ben Johnson or Mike Vrabel, then the other person to me is going to be the top landing spot here. You get what I'm saying? Like,
100%.
I don't think we can fall out one way or the other if one of these teams jumps us before we make our decision. Because for both head coaches with Vrabel and Ben Johnson, they need a quarterback. So as much as Vrabel or Ben Johnson might consider the Raiders and Tom Brady over there, who's their quarterback?
Yeah.
Right? So it comes down to the Patriots and the Bears as it stands right now. Now, Jacksonville might be able to get back into this fight, especially if they were to fire Trent Baalke. But now, Trent Baalke is there. And so I think that really messes some things up for them as it stands right now.
No, I agree. And it's one of those things, too. I know that everybody's talking about doom and gloom with Ryan Poles staying. So when you say that, though, about Trent Baalke, like, hey, they could fire Trent Baalke if it's communicated to them, that's what needs to be done. Do you think, and because whenever Kevin Warren was like, made it seem like Ryan Poles was sort of a lame duck GM, right. I took that to mean like, hey, if Ben Johnson shows up and goes, this guy needs to go, that the Bears are like, okay. I thought that's what I took from Kevin Warren, but was I misguided in that one?
Yeah, I don't think Ryan Poles is going to be shown the door in any scenario. So I think if a coach comes in here and says, I'll only come if you get rid of Ryan, I think then his name will be taken out of consideration. And Bears fans that would hear that and say, well, that's a mistake, it's hard for me to argue with you on that point. Yeah, I understand. But the reality of it is I don't believe that that's what's going to happen. So you can hope for it or think that that's the correct move. And I wouldn't fight you on that. If it were me, I probably would have shown Ryan Poles the door. As much as I hate saying that, I actually, as opposed to Matt Eberflus, I'm sure they're all good people, but just from a football sense, like I wasn't the biggest fan of Matt Eberflus, but I am a fan of Ryan Poles, and I understand he's made a lot of mistakes, but I just think he has, to me, the capability of being a good GM. Albeit a lot of mistakes here these first 3 years. A lot of mistakes. I'm not going to try to hide from that. So, but I also don't think the Bears are going to let him go. I don't think they're going to let him go. So if that's the case and Ben Johnson walks in here, I just don't think it doesn't make much sense to me that Ben Johnson would take an interview with the Bears if he's upset. He's already made it clear to his agent, well, unless they get rid of, like, because a lot of this stuff can be done from a back channel standpoint. I have to feel like, you know, there's owners meetings that took place, 3 or 4 weeks ago. Agents can talk, there's a lot of conversations going on behind the scenes. And if the Bears made it clear to them, like, hey, we're not getting rid of Ryan Poles, and Ben Johnson was like, well, I'm not coming unless you get rid of Ryan Poles, then why even set up the interview in the first place? So I don't know. It's nice that we're going to come to a resolution on these answers sooner rather than later.
Yeah, it is one of the things too that I always, and again, to your point, he's not taking the interview with Jacksonville, at least not to my knowledge. He's not throwing his hat into the ring.
And the Jets too, right? The Jets, there hasn't been anything there. So he's only going to pick and choose his spots for the teams he actually wants to go to.
No, it makes perfect sense. And so I think that, there's been a lot of reporting over the time that Ben Johnson has really liked the Chicago job, that he loves. I don't know if he loves it. I don't know what it is, but Caleb Williams is a big part of it. And I think that as much as people want to go out there and be like, I thought that this guy was way better, right? Brock Bowers had a better rookie season than Caleb Williams. Okay, fine. I think any coach who is rational looks at it and goes like, I'd rather coach Caleb Williams over just about anybody, especially all the rookies this year. One thing, though, I got to ask you about, though. I laugh when people are like, well, who wants to join the NFC North? Such a tough division. Like, you think the NFL doesn't evolve? It doesn't, like, that to me is like one of the weird, like, the NFC North might not be good next year. Yeah. Well, I mean, it'll be fine, but I mean, like, it's not like it's the most unbelievable division.
If we want to have our meatball segment of the day, then yeah, the Lions are going to lose both their coordinators. Of course, they're doing all the work there. And then, now Dan Campbell's going to get exposed next year. Yeah, I'm sure none of anything I'm about to say here, I'm sure won't get clipped and used against us 12 months from now. And then, of course, you've got, the Packers. The Bears should have beat them twice this year.
Yeah.
And they're 1-5 in the division, and the Bears are 1-5 in the division. And I think our point differential on the games we played against them, I think we won by more points. So we're better than the Packers, right? They won by 1, right? And we won by 2. Isn't that how it goes? So we're better than the Packers already. And then the Vikings, they're going to lose Brian Flores, and Sam Darnold, may or may not be the guy after what we saw last week. I know I'm not allowed any Sam Darnold slander here on this program because he's your buddy. So I will refrain from any kind of Sam Darnold slander. But again, this is just the meatball segment of the day where we try to sell to you why the NFC North isn't going to be good next year.
Well, it's not even meatballing that hard, but things change. Like the NFL rapidly evolves one way or the other. Like we're not that far removed from the Patriots being the most dominant team in the world to now like just being an afterthought, firing a coach after one season. And everything is cyclical. Like look at what happened to the Dallas Cowboys. They were 12-5 a year ago. Mm-hmm. Now they don't even make the playoffs. I don't even think there's been a repeat winner in the NFC East for almost a decade. Like it's something that just cycles through, and the NFL is such a cycle that I don't think that any coach is going to be like, well, I really love Caleb Williams. However, the Lions might be good for a couple of years. Like nobody, like, especially if you're coming from that team being like, I know how to handle them. Like, I got it.
And the other thing too, to consider is look how well Ben Johnson has done against the other teams here in this division. Right. I think there's only been a few teams to score like 40 points against a Brian Flores defense. And I think Ben Johnson's done it like 3 times or something like that.
Like 4 times. Yeah. Over the last 2 years.
Right. There's only been like 6 ever in Brian Flores' tenure, and Ben Johnson's done 4 of them. And so he's done well against us, obviously. Right. Then he'll also know what the Lions are trying to do. To a certain extent, obviously, unless Aaron Glenn goes somewhere else. So that'll change some things, but he's certainly going to understand the personnel on that team. Ultimately, if there was other situations that Ben Johnson could go to, certainly in the NFC where he could avoid this division, maybe that would be the route. But going to the AFC and taking over with Trevor Lawrence because you're trying to avoid the NFC North, well, now you're dealing with some of the best quarterbacks in all of football, and that's a much tougher conference. Yeah. So, I don't think Ben Johnson's going to run from that fight. And having a guy like Caleb Williams, I think is going to be the selling point and he got to see it firsthand, just how much potential he has right in front of his face on Thanksgiving. So when the Bears were at probably their highest moment of turmoil. and he still in that moment was able to perform on a big stage like that. So, I think we are getting very close to pushing this, and it sounds like there's been disputed reports on what day Ben Johnson is going to interview with the Bears via Zoom, whether that's tomorrow or Saturday. So we'll see, but I think that we're going to get closer to that reality, and then, see when the Lions are ousted from the playoffs, or if they win the Super Bowl, and we'll find out when Ben Johnson's the head coach of the Chicago Bears, much to the chagrin of Don Burr, resident Lions fan.
Don Burr shaking in his boots. But I think when it comes to Ben Johnson, and he's sitting there, and let's say that he's narrowed it down to the Patriots and the Patriots and the Bears, he's looking at the 2 quarterbacks and probably would side with Caleb Williams. If he's walking in to a shop that sells trading cards, do you think he's buying Caleb Williams or Drake May? And speaking of which, at Windy City Sports Cards, they specialize in buying and selling all things related to Chicago sports. Whether you are a diehard fan of the Bears, Bulls, Cubs, White Sox, or Blackhawks, or Sky, or the Fire, they've got you covered with an extensive selection of sports memorabilia and collectibles. In addition to their Chicago-focused items, they also offer a vast collection of sports trading cards and memorabilia from your favorite teams and players. If you want to find a Pete Rose card when he played for the Montreal Expos, Mike's probably got it at Windy City Sports Cards. and we do appreciate everything he does and all the cool things. A couple of weeks ago, we had Tyler Scott on, and we were going through all these cool cards that he hooked us up with. Still got to get the display finished, but we're going to be doing that soon. God, I had a question for you, and it left my mind because you mentioned something about these divisions. Oh, you know what it was? Here's what it is. For anybody who says they'll never leave to go coach in division, and I know this is a reference. This is dated. Nobody remembers this, but back in the day, the Dallas Cowboys used to be a really good football team, and Jimmy Johnson had led the Cowboys to the Super Bowl, and they won one. It was either after Jimmy Johnson's first or second Super Bowl. In 1994, North Turner jumps to Washington, not only in the division, but their biggest rival. Back in the day, Washington and Dallas used to be the biggest rivals. Washington had been the previous Super Bowl winner before the Cowboys took over. So these guys don't care about facing their former team. Troy Aikman was like North Turner's best friend, and he still went to Washington. So don't be these people that are like, he's not going to want to coach against the Lions. Like, no, these guys want to be head coaches, and they want to have a good quarterback because they know their job is tied to having a good quarterback. If you look at a team like the Buffalo Bills, I would ask anybody, go look at the litany of coaches who were in Buffalo before Josh Allen got there. I mean, we're talking about guys like Chan Gailey, Rex Ryan, like so many. I can't even think. And when you're coaching EJ Manuel or any one of the like JP Lossman, like, yeah, you look like kind of a buffoon, but like, oh, now Sean McDermott knows how to coach because he had Josh Allen. So don't think that these guys, these coordinators aren't looking at who the quarterback is, which is why I think the Raiders are probably in a bad spot.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be interesting. I'm certainly excited for it. Excited to root against. I see Jimmy Hoffa in the chat trying to say "Go Pack, go." I'm excited to watch the Eagles storm through the NFC and just knock out each NFC North team one by one.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to feel sorry for you, Jimmy, when that happens. And you can, say that all you want, but you guys are 0-1 in 2025, and the Bears are 1-0. And that's a reality you have to live in, Jimmy, is that you guys are not as good as the Bears are this year. That's a factual statement.
Everybody knows this. Who has more wins at Lambeau Field in 2025? Caleb Williams or Jordan Love?
Exactly. Jimmy, do you have the answer to that question?
Well, what's the answer, Jimmy? What's the answer? Go to the playoffs. You guys will go one and done against the Eagles.
Yeah. Not only will Caleb Williams have more wins than Jordan Love in 2025 for months to come, but Jordan Love and Caleb Williams will have the same amount of playoff wins in 2025.
Right. But we do know that the Packers are going to be playing host to the Bears in week 1 next year. Yeah. Like the NFL is making sure that the Packers get that win back immediately.
Right.
Monday, it won't be the Thursday night game because that's always the Super Bowl winner. But there is no doubt in my mind that one of the preseason games to open up next season is going. And you know the funny thing is, it'll be Ben Johnson. So if you wanted to do a divisional thing, you'd be like, well, the Lions. Maybe
right. It'd be the Lions, right?
No. They want to give it back to the Packers so badly. You know that there's people in the NFL offices right now smarting.
The Packers probably already sent in the petition for it.
They're already like, we got to play the Bears week 1 before Ben Johnson fully gets his team operational and ready to go. They got to go back there and it's like the WWE. Like whenever Hulk Hogan got pinned, like he had to get his win back immediately or else he was going to sit there and pout. So it's just one of us. Did
you enjoy the Netflix WWE? Did you enjoy
Can you still watch it? I was on my friend's TV show.
Yeah, I watched it.
How did you watch it after the fact?
What do you mean after the fact?
I couldn't watch. I couldn't.
No, I watched it live.
No, you didn't. You were on. We were on CHGO at the time that Ross started.
Well, I watched it.
Or did I not have access to it live? I don't know,
but I watched it.
I'm an old head. I don't know. I want to watch it. I'm actually This is the time of year I get back into the WWE.
The clarity, I was just so impressed by how clear it looked. Like, because like it was streaming, so many people in the world watching it. It was like crystal clear video. It was good. It was entertaining. It was good.
It was good. I did like watching Hulk Hogan get beat or get booed. And not for, and I not listen, no. I don't like Hulk Hogan for the reasons of like him keeping down the Macho Man. Like when the Macho Man won his title, Hulk Hogan had to make himself a part of it. I think that's, people don't understand why, like, I know why some people, why CNN and all those things feel like this is why, but no. Like most of the wrestlers probably agree with Hulk Hogan in that respect. We don't like Hulk Hogan because he's an asshole. That's why. He's a dick. Like we don't like him. Like they're because he's a bad dude.
Well, you had Seth Rollins and CM Punk squaring off, both Bears fans, right?
Yeah, that was great too. Yeah. By the way, I still believe that somebody wrote CM Punk's notes for when he was on Netflix and he was telling the ownership group to sell the team. I still feel somebody fed him that. There's no way I'm like, why wouldn't you have, by the way, why wouldn't you have Seth Rollins do that? That offended me. Although Seth Rollins was on GMFB on Friday, and nobody thought to tell me, like, oh, by the way, Seth Rollins is coming in to talk.
Well, he was at the Super Bowl on Radio Row last year. Did you happen to run into him last year?
We could not connect with Seth Rollins. We missed him.
Yeah,
but we did get who was the wrestler we did get? We did get Anthony Bowens. We missed Tony Khan, but I know Tony Khan's been in your building too.
Yeah,
but we did. So
I'll know. I'll recognize him now.
Now you'll recognize Tony Khan. Good. Yeah. Owner of an NFL franchise. I hope you can recognize him. So what do you think the timeline is? What do you think? I know Bears fans are not going to be patient.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, right? Because if Ben Johnson is their number one target, well, then they have to wait, right?
Yeah.
Unless the interview goes so bad that they get the inclination that he has no interest here and they're moving on. So to me, you know, you've got this bye week. You're going to wait for Detroit to play. And we talked about this on Monday on After Dark. Like, are you rooting for them to lose right away so you can get to him being your head coach and building his staff, which is certainly important? Or if you know he's going to be your head coach, or at least you feel really good if you're the Bears, are you kind of rooting for Ben Johnson to get to the Super Bowl, to get that kind of experience that is just something that you can't quantify? That's as valuable experience as you can possibly get to prep for that, 2 weeks between the NFC Championship and Super Bowl to be ready for the biggest game of your life. I had some friends, because I know we talked about it on Monday, like, would you prefer, like, okay, if you had to pick and you knew Ben Johnson was going to be your coach, most fans agreed, okay, I want him to get to the Super Bowl because our coach is getting that experience. But then the threshold of, would you root for Ben Johnson to win the Super Bowl? Adam, you said that it was a win-win. If my coach wins the Super Bowl, great. And if he loses it, now I get to laugh at the Lions, great. But I had some friends to me kind of pitch to me, well, I'd want him to get there and lose. Yeah. And my friend said this. I'd want him to get there and lose, because then that's going to keep that fire in his belly, that hunger to get back to the top and win it again, as opposed to achieving that goal. And that kind of takes some of your desire away from you a little bit.
Yeah, there is something about that. Although when you're an assistant coach and you win a Super Bowl, I think there is still something to, you want to go out there and prove that you were actually the person who got that done, that you were the person who, or, like that you can do it on your own. You don't need Dan Campbell there to kind of lead your way and do all that stuff. So I think that, I think I was actually the one who on Monday night was like, I want him to go to the Super Bowl and lose, because I don't want him to have that ring. Because number one, I don't want Detroit to have it necessarily, because it is still fun. It is still fun that Detroit has not won a Super Bowl. Now you can go back through NFL history and say the Lions have won NFL championships. You got to go back to the 50s. You can even say, and a lot of people don't understand this because they don't know history, which is fine. The Vikings actually do have an NFL championship to their credit. When they went on to win, when they won the NFC, leading into Super Bowl IV, they were technically the NFL champions, because the merger happened the following year. The merger happens in 1970. So that Super Bowl where the Cowboys faced the Colts in one of the worst Super Bowls of all time, the year before the Chiefs were the AFL champion. And it was one of those things that was significant because, I'm sorry, this is history time. Now I sound like when I'm talking to my soccer team and all the girls are like, all right, coach has got story time. And they all sit down like, okay, what are you going to tell us? But it's one of those things like, obviously the Jets win Super Bowl III, AFL, sort of on the level of the NFL, but people still didn't really believe it. So the following year, the Chiefs were the AFL team. The Vikings were the NFL team. And the Chiefs winning that game actually cemented the fact that, the AFL is on the level. That wasn't a fluke. The Jets' victory wasn't hollow, so to speak, because if the Vikings had gone out there and destroyed them like 35-10, you'd be like, see, the AFL sucks. Right. So the Vikings still have that. But I still love the fact that the Lions and Vikings, the Lions have never been to a Super Bowl, and the Vikings have lost 4. I still, even though we've won only 1, I still think that's fun.
Yeah. Well, we got to take our victories however we can get them, and we're scraping at the bottom of the barrel right now here as Chicago Bears fans. So I don't blame you. But the reality is we are undefeated in 2025.
No, that's what exactly. And as we were saying this, and we're trying to make fun of Caleb Williams and do all that stuff. And hey, you know what? We're using semantics to kind of prove our point. And everybody who sits there and goes like, I hope you guys are enjoying your Super Bowl win. You're like, hell yeah, I am. I love this.
Yep.
This is great. Like a week ago, I wasn't even wearing Bears gear. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like I moved on. I checked out. I was worried about other things. And now I'm like fully back in. Time to enjoy the moments of when the Bears are really good. And I know Aaron Nagler's like, this is your time to shine. You're like, yeah, it is. This is great. This is actually better. This is like winning a Super Bowl championship because we're awesome from now until the season kicks off next year. So we've got 9 months of like really reveling in this and really being like, hey, this is awesome, and going through all that stuff, as opposed to like the Packers who are going to lose this week and then have nothing to show for it.
It just shows you how insecure Packer fans are, like Aaron Nagler. You know, these guys, they're trying to pretend like they don't care, and they do. Aaron
does care. I think it's Bukowski.
Yeah, Peter Bukowski. Yeah, all of them, and their fans too. They've been mad all week about it, and like normal fans, you know, that have had a good year. They're going to the playoffs. They lose the last week of the season with
I would be like, who cares?
Quarterback in and other players, you know, sitting. Like most fans, whatever, take it, you peasants. But these Packer fans, they are so entitled.
Yeah.
They're so upset that the Bears got one on them at the end that they're mad about it. And they're gonna let it eat them alive all week, and it's gonna spill over into the game against the Eagles. I have no doubt.
That's why we call them Entitled Town more than anything else. All right. Well, listen, Greg, I want to thank you so much for being here. We got to cut it short. I do have I have another song. My all-star team is still scrimmaging and doing all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So we got to go out, take care of them. If any news breaks, which again, as we talked about here, I don't anticipate anything happening over the next, I think it's going to be a couple of weeks, because I think the Lions are going to make a deep run in the playoffs. So we're probably not going to get any true clarity until that time happens. So we'll just sit here and enjoy the ride. But if anything does break, we'll be back. We'll have a Tyler Scott show later on this week. We'll have Circa picks or the sick picks presented by Circa. But until then, and then we'll be back on Monday. CHGO After Dark again on Monday.
That's right.
Okay, we'll be there. But thank you very much for being here. And thanks to everybody who joined in here today. So for Greg, I'm Adam. Bear down, and Sammy, go ahead and play us out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcast. Brought to you by Circa Sports Illinois.